New Year's resolutions are tricky. Promises of performance can prove difficult to keep. But that did not stop Facebook's CEO Mark Zuckerberg vowing at the outset of 2018 that this would be the year that he would fix things, that his company would start protecting its users from abuse and hate, defend them against interference by nation-states and bad political actors, and make sure, as he put it, that going on Facebook would be time well spent. Since then, multiple controversies and unfavorable news stories, including the Cambridge Analytica data breach and the UN's report on Facebook's role in ethnic cleansing in Myanmar, have exposed some of the pragmatic business calculations the company has made. They've also provided a glimpse into how Facebook goes after its critics, and they put the lie to the feel-good image that the company has worked so hard to sell. It'll be interesting to see what kind of New Year's message Zuckerberg comes up with a couple of weeks from now. Our starting point this week is Facebook's California headquarters in Silicon Valley, USA. Facebook released its 2018 year in review last week, marking various global events, the elections, celebrity weddings, and sporting occasions that drove engagement on the site. What it did not look at was itself, the kind of year Facebook had, which might have been time better spent.
I would have started with the Cambridge Analytica story, in which this company, run by a bunch of Bond villains, had sensitive data from untold numbers of Facebook users around the world to coerce people and move elections. That's only the start. I would have had clips of refugees in Myanmar driven out by the worst sort of propaganda spread by the government of Myanmar and many religious leaders explicitly using Facebook to foster genocide. Then I would have gone through all of the stammering that Mark Zuckerberg committed.
No.
While testifying before various committees, the level of scrutiny.
Is Facebook too powerful?
The level of criticism.
The purpose of that user agreement is to cover Facebook's rear end.
And then I would have finished with the embarrassing revelations that Facebook itself has paid political operatives to engage in the spread of the very kind of propaganda that people have been accusing Facebook of fostering. It's been a stunning year for Facebook.
And all of that came after the New Year's message Zuckerberg posted in January, in which he admitted Facebook had a lot of work to do. The company was dealing with the hate speech and misinformation rampaging across the social media network. And there was the aftermath of the 2016 US election, when Facebook was accused of enabling Russian operatives out to meddle in American democracy. The public noises Zuckerberg and his number two, Sheryl Sandberg, were making were along the lines of, "We're trying, doing our best."
And we have a lot more to do here.
Statements that after the Cambridge Analytica data breach story came out in March no longer passed the smell test.
The Cambridge Analytica scandal is not quite what people think it is. That scandal is about how a company used Facebook exactly as intended. Cambridge Analytica are not the only people that are downloading Facebook data, using it to micro-target people in order to go back and send more advertisements to get people's attention on Facebook. Because this is their very core business model. This is what advertising is.
For all the attention that Cambridge Analytica and Russian disinformation has gotten in the US and the UK, for me the real impact that Facebook has had in 2018 is in developing areas of the world. Myanmar is the one that has got the most attention, and we've seen there how Facebook has been weaponized, and the government and the army have spread hate speech against the Rohingya Muslims, which has incited violence. Now, Facebook repeatedly told us that they're doing more, they're hiring more people, but they still don't have a full-time employee in Myanmar.
Facebook suffered another reputational blow last month, the latest of many, at the hands of the New York Times. Based on leaked internal communications, the Times reported that Facebook had hired a Washington-based PR firm called Definers to investigate and smear some of Facebook's critics. That did not exactly square with Zuckerberg's sugary words.
Connecting people, building community, and bringing the world closer together.
One of those critics was George Soros, who, in addition to being a powerful individual, is also a lightning rod for right-wing movements. He's obviously a billionaire investor, but he's also to the right wing sort of a symbol of Jewish power. And so the idea that Facebook was looking into George Soros really played into one of those powerful emotional narratives and made the company really look bad.
The report spoke to a certain level of chaos within the company. Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg came out and said they didn't realize that the company had hired definers. Ultimately, Elliot Schrage, who's a departing head of communications, he put his hands up and he said it was his fault. But it just added to the sense that Facebook was a company that you couldn't really trust and that they were doing things that Facebook shouldn't really be doing.
Trust when dealing with the news media must be earned, and Facebook's corporate culture when dealing with journalists asking troublesome questions seems to be rooted in avoidance, batting away stories, refusing to answer on the record, then finding itself on the defensive when the story comes out anyway. In the case of the Cambridge Analytica data breach, Facebook tried to ignore the questions. Then, after The Observer published the story, Mark Zuckerberg went on CNN to do the talking.
Mark, what happened? What went wrong?
Zuckerberg is a self-described geek.
Well, it's hard to know what we'll find, but we're going to review thousands of apps.
As a television performer, he's not exactly killing it.
I think Facebook was caught flat-footed, was used to getting a relatively favorable reception from the press. And after Cambridge Analytica, the public and the media changed their tune, and that lack of being able to see itself the way the world did certainly hampered Facebook throughout 2018 as it tended to underreact, under-anticipate the level of scrutiny that it would get.
The bottom line on Facebook will always be the numbers, and they're mixed. It has 2.2 billion users worldwide and is still growing in Asia and Africa. However, growth is stagnant in Europe and the Americas, where most of the revenues come from, and that has shaved about $1.2 billion off Facebook's share value, a drop of about 30%. The real threat to Facebook, though, the one Mark Zuckerberg must be thinking about, comes from governments and their regulators. They have been as slow to react to the Facebook problem as the company has, but more and more of them are talking about and inching towards reining in the social media giant.
The only potentially effective regulatory action I've seen against Facebook has come out of the European Union with the introduction in 2018 of the General Data Protection Regulation. The very fact that now companies that take our data have to allow European citizens to explicitly offer their permission for the use of the data, I think is crucial. Those are important rights that I wish the rest of the world had.
Across the water in the US, the regulators had a much more hands-off approach compared to their EU counterparts, but that could all change because with the switch in the House in Washington come January, we may see Democrats want to pursue a more aggressive approach against these companies, especially over the Russia disinformation campaign, which is still a huge issue. And I think that ultimately we're going to see regulators clamp down on Facebook much, much heavier in 2019.
What we're seeing is governments are trying to flex their muscles. And we're going to see ever more examples of governments cracking down on this. And I imagine within the next year, we'll probably see the first example of a government just outright shutting down Facebook in that country and seeing what happens. I don't know which country it'll be or how long it'll be for, but I imagine some government is going to want to test their resolve relative to Facebook, and that will be interesting.